Hey, it's Mark Kelly here from What I Know Now. Welcome to episode 11. Today's guest is Pat Falvey. Pat has lived an extraordinary life, something off a movie reel. By the age of 21, he was a multi-millionaire, only to lose it all by 29. A chance encounter out hill walking acted as a catalyst for him climbing Everest and the Seven Summits twice. Pat has lived and worked with 32 tribes around the world. Now Pat is a famous author, explorer, entrepreneur and world-regarded inspirational speaker. Today I share with you in episode 1 his influences throughout his life and impact his grandmother had on his mindset, getting his first job aged 6, living and working with 32 tribes and what he knows now, having a dream and going for it, not caring what anyone else said about yourself, and dreaming big and having huge goals. We also speak about mindset and how at an early age you can impact it and leaving a legacy. I'm delighted to share with you episode 1. I look forward to seeing your response. Pat, absolute pleasure to be sitting down with yourself
Pleasure
today.
to see you too.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So going into your background, I actually didn't necessarily know where to start. So I thought it'd be actually to start from the start and then we can actually go through your experience. Could you tell me about your passion for entrepreneurism and how you actually had that fire in you from the very, very get-go?
Well, I suppose it started very young. I had my first business when I was about 6-7 years of age. My grandmother, we came from a poor background in Gronabroher in Cork. It's like Ballymun in Dublin or the Bronx in America. And she made me work. And my work was very simple. It was gathering a stock and trade that cost nothing, which was second-hand clothes. The people of our area, started getting jobs in the likes of the Fords and Dunlops. We were going through the Industrial Revolution. And I used to go around with a pram, collect the clothes from with my grandmother. And then she'd go and sell them in the Coal Quay and around the country at different marts. And she ingrained into me at that very, very earlier years of my life, between 6 and 11, about this aspect of wanting to become an entrepreneur, a salesman, and be quite independent. And by the time I was 11, I had over £1,000 in the bank, which that was, going back a long time, and I was the richest child on that side of the block.
What would that be worth in today's money?
Well, I'd reckon it must be 10,000-15,000 quid.
Wow. And
it all came from my grandmother making me a dealer. We have a saying in Ireland, pavy or gypsy. We were the ultimate when it came to that and selling and traveling to sell our wares.
Yeah.
So that all started, and I think by the time I was 11 or 12, I was, quite on the road to entrepreneurship. And then what happened, I was driving my pram one day with all my clothes down to the mart. I looked like a poor child at the time with a little cap and the pram. And these Americans came over and they said, can they have their picture taken with me?
Wow.
Can you imagine that? So what did I do? I put out my hand and I got sixpence.
You put your hand out for the money?
Yeah, for the photograph. It was my first modelling job.
Okay.
So basically, but from there, they said something very profound that really affected me, because my grandmother, who was training me to be an entrepreneur, a salesman, a person that worked hard. Education wasn't the big thing now at this stage, in our family at the time, because we came from the poorer side of the track.
Yeah.
And so they tapped me on the head like this, and they said, aren't Irish children very happy? Aren't they far better off poor? And I looked, and when I went home to my grandmother and drove my pram home, and I said, Nan, are we far better off poor? She gave me a clatter like this. This is when your grandmother could hit you.
Yeah.
And she caught me by the ear like this, and she pulled me into our council house. And like in most places now in the world, you will see that, there's pictures on the wall, and there was 4 pictures on the wall. There was the Sacred Heart, right, which is her spiritual leader. There was the Pope. We were Catholics. And she said, that's the Pope. And then there was our president. And then there was one other, and she put me up to him by the ear like this. And she said, see that guy there? And I said, yes, Nan. Yes, Nan. She said, see him, he's the wealthiest guy in the world, right, okay? And he is Irish. And I looked again. And she said, do you know who he is? That's JFK, the American president. And she said, your son as good as him. And no matter what you do in life, I want you to believe that you're as good as him. Well, at 15, I left school to become a millionaire.
And that confidence, you can look back and see from that day.
Yeah, and the thing with it is, now that I'm years older, and science will prove that our, earlier years is what forms our mindset.
Yeah.
And ever since that, my mindset has always been triggered to the fact of positivity.
Yeah.
Always believing that you can. She also had a great saying, which I know Ford had as well, right, okay, is the fact, if you think you can, you will, and if you think you can't, you won't. So she always taught me to think anything that I wanted to do that I could.
Yeah.
Because whether you think you can or you can't, you know what? You're right on both situations.
100%. Yeah.
So it was all about believing.
Being that mindset. Did you feel you had an edge then because you had that confidence in you when you were going about doing your tasks day to day?
I don't think I never even thought about an edge or not an edge. I was just on my course to becoming a millionaire. Now, did I know how to do it? And this is what happens with most people. Most people are afraid to dream big. Did I know how I was going to do it? Of course not. I didn't have a clue how I was going to become a millionaire, but it became my mantra. It became my vision. My subconscious actually took hold of it. I told everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody that I was going to be a millionaire, and they all looked at me and they said, asshole. And I had to fight that. I came from a background, right, okay, whereas when I was going around in my home place and I was saying I was going to become a millionaire, they said, well, you're only a brickie. Yeah. I started as a brickie, how the fact do you think you're going to come to this, right? But lo and behold, I had fantastic parents as well.
Yeah.
Because they believed, they said, okay, do it. And I got this amazing piece of advice when I was only about 18. I went to my father and I said, I was a bit disappointed. Here I was with my dream and I wasn't a millionaire. I was 18,
It's pretty high goals in 3 years to become a millionaire.
Yeah, but anyway, the thing with it is I wasn't even getting next to near it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was I was working my butt off, and I had a lot of, failures. I had a lot of setbacks, but I kept my eye on the ball. So I went to my father, who's Tim, and I said, Dad, what am I going to do? Will I go back to college? And he turned to me and, he knew I was a fairly big dreamer. He said, son, you're a dreamer. You're the biggest dreamer I know. So he said, dream and dream big. But remember, it's in the following of the dream is where the success lies. Get it? Yeah. The following of the dream. And then, if it's a case you follow your dream with conviction and passion, then you'll actually on the road. If you achieve it, that is the bonus.
So your dad was focused on the journey and actually you going on that journey rather than necessarily getting to the destination.
Yeah. And it's very, very true, in people's lives, right? The success is about having the goal. What happens with most people, they don't have a goal. And what is a goal? It's what you want. And loads of people come to me now in my consultancy and in businesses and organizations, and they say, we don't really have a clear goal. And then I start by saying, what do you want to achieve?
Yeah.
And then they know what they want to achieve. Increase your sales by 20%, double your salary. And, these are all aspirational. It's what you may want. You might have to sit down and do your figures and say, I need to make 20,000 a year. I need to make 50,000 a year. Well then, why not? I want to make 100,000 a year. If it's a case you can perceive it, you can achieve it.
Yeah. So having that vision, starting off there. So when your dad said that to you and he had that conversation, do you think that was a big milestone in your life?
I don't think it was a big milestone in my life. I just took it that it was life.
Okay.
right? And life is about mentors. Remember this, whether you like it or not, and I know you have 2 young children, you're a mentor to them.
Yeah,
what you
100%.
think about now is what's influencing them as they progress in their earlier years. If you keep on going home to them and say, I have a crappy job, I hate what I do, that's the mindset that they'll get actually and grow into.
100% agree with you. So my son's just 3 and my other son's 15 months. And I know I've got these years to form their mindset and the beliefs. And I take that very, very seriously in terms of my interactions with them as well. And it makes a big difference to it. But I didn't know that up until recently. The difference I can make.
Oh, the difference is huge.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you an instance at the moment. I have a grandson too, who's 3 years of age. And it's amazing. The amount of learning that he's doing at this point in time is just phenomenal. I just wrote a new book recently, You Have the Power, right? So I'm talking to my grandson, right, okay, and he has a couple of illnesses, right, okay? And basically he's a fantastic fighter, right, okay, absolutely beautiful child, like, So I got him saying, right, okay, I have the power. Like it's the picture on my front of my book. I have the power. And now I go to him and I'd say, Jack, I said, how are you? He puts his hand up like this. And he said, Granda, I have the power. And I honestly believe it's about affirmation. It's about knowing what you want.
Yeah.
And, most of my life now and my goals and my vision in life is to help hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people all around the world, because we're in a very lost kind of phase at the moment, right, okay? When lots of people don't know what they want. They don't know where they're going. The spirituality has been lost, like our ability to focus, has been lost, like whether it's because of, technology or anything like that. One of my greatest beliefs is like, I always say like I'm not an educated person, but like, I've actually mastered in the traits of life.
Yeah.
Right. So my PhD, my whole life is built around actually experiment. I've lived with 32 tribes, around the world, trying to figure out what it is that has driven man since the evolution of the species, right? We all have goals, dreams, and aspirations. So it's all about having the goals, dreams, aspirations, having the visualization, having the actually mantras that you will say to go there.
And it starts off with that sense of purpose, about where you want to go, that clear vision that actually cements, this is the journey I want to go on. What I found from watching your videos and listening to you speak is that you had this goal, desire of what you want to achieve and where you want to get there, but through your affirmations, you were drawn to it. You were drawn to the people that you met on your journey that were taking you there as well.
And the other thing about, people say, but how do you focus on that, right? Look, if you look around my walls.
Very impressive.
Every visualization that I climbed the top of Mount Everest, what you're looking at here is a picture of Everest. Every time I pass it, even when I didn't, I was saying, I'll stand there one day. Yeah. Then I looked at every video, read every book, found out where people died, where they didn't die, right? And, like for instance, when I started first, 1 in every 10 people would die. Yeah. And people were telling me I'm mad. When I was going to become a millionaire, or said it, right? Okay, people said, are you crazy? But I read about all the articles, I read about all the people that had made it, right? On Everest, for instance, 1 in 10 would die. Yes, fact. You can't get away from fact, and you must take fact on board. Yeah. But then what you do is you analyze it. And you know what I realized?
9 out of 10 people lived. Yeah.
And I was going to be one of the 9.
One thing I was very impressed by, you looked where all those people had died and worked out previously that they died here, this is how they died, so that you were consciously going into those situations knowing in different places where those people died and the risk, you'd focus on that probability of that risk factor as well.
Yeah, like I calculate the risk. Like success is about calculating risks, right? In other words, on a recent, recession recently, and when the whole world went crazy, right? Okay, it was bound to happen because when you analysed it and you looked at the history of, successful people look at the history. They also look at the facts.
Yeah.
2% yield on investments was never ever going to work.
Yeah.
2%. Like imagine people buying property at 45 times or 50 times rental income, 2% yield. They were just hoping for capital growth all the time. So success to me, whether it's in my speaking business, whether it's in my businesses that I'm in, whether it's the film making, the property development that we do, the travel, it's all about the attributes that it takes to succeed. And I guarantee you, whether you're 15, 20, 45, 55, 65, and as I'm going into my 60s now, my successes will have the same attributes every one I take up, because we talk about milestones.
Yeah.
You're a young man now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm a little bit older, right? Okay. See, now I'm going into my 60s. But what I do know is that the average age that we're going to live to is 80.
Yeah.
Now, I've learned a hell of a lot between your age and my age. And I also realize that I probably have about 20 years left, right? Can you imagine that? So I'm going to actually do everything I want to the best of my ability. And you know what? What I'm trying to do now is leave the best legacy possible that I can do, and actually take what I have learned and pass it on.
And people will remember you for that, because
It's a legacy
of the people that you've impacted.
Yeah, but it's all about legacy now. My legacy is my grandchildren.
Yeah.
My legacy is the people that I mentor. My legacy, look, I'm quite okay now. I don't have to really worry about where I'm going. I don't have a lot of time to worry about. Now, hopefully, I will live till I'm 100.
Yeah.
And I will live, corpus mentis, like where I have, my mind and my health. But I'm also into logic, and I'm into, statistics. The simple fact about it is, I know that between me and my comrades around me, that some of us will not be in existence when we're 80.
Yeah, very true. When Dr. John DeMartini, he'd mentioned about legacy a couple of weeks back, 3 days after the event, I was just coming out of the shower, and it struck me that I was going to die. And for some that might sound very peculiar, because you're going to die, but it struck me I was going to die. And what have I actually left? What have I actually created that's memorable? And since that day, it's only a couple of weeks back, I felt the world more in my face and my eyes in terms of the result. And you mentioned about my kids as well. Everything that I do, I want to be an impact to them, as well as other people that I meet. And my whole mindset has just tweaked a bit now, because it's become more real. And sometimes, I know you probably experience it so much, but when I go for a run, when those endorphins kick in and that clarity kicks in for me, I feel like I'm on top of the world, right? And I'll never be on top of the world like you have literally been, but for me it's at top of the world. But I think when you know you're going to die, there's something very nice about that feeling as well, because you've nothing to fear. And I think that's I really feel that. I wouldn't have felt that up until that point a few days ago.
Can I just tell you, right, okay, about dying, right? From the time we're born, we're dying. It's simple.
Very true.
Once we actually realize that, we will then, try to live our life to the best that we can be. Now you can actually, and it's not morbid, right, okay? The thought should actually inject in you, it's time to do stuff.
Yeah.
Do you realize that our planet is 4.5 billion years old? And do you realize in your lifetime, which will go from 0 to 80 and hopefully 100, and it'll increase further, you are but mere 0.1 second of that in the input to our universe. So we're quite insignificant.
When you say it like that, we're very insignificant.
Yeah, so therefore you might as well do the best that you can do to be the best that you can be. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You don't have to climb Mount Everest. You don't have to, become an Olympic winner. Like being the best that you can be is about being the best that you can be at your job, at your family, if it's a sport, and if you can, excel and have bigger dreams, then just go to be the best you can be.
And I agree with you. For me, it's about being the best possible version of yourself, whatever that might be. Trust you enjoyed the first part of Pat Falvey's remarkable journey. I'll be sharing with you in the coming days part 2 of Pat's journey. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes or your Android podcast of choice. Just enter WIKN. You can also catch the latest episodes and blogs on the website www.wikn.co. That's www.wikn.co. I look forward to speaking with you next week. What action are you going to take after listening to Pat's talk? Remember, dream big and take action. Take care. Have a super week. All the best, Mark.